What's going on, folks, and welcome into the Jake and Joe Bengals preview show presented by First Star Logistics, the first episode of its kind, as Joe and I are back together here with First Star Logistics for another year with preview shows. I said preview show, right? And post-game shows for you all season long. We've got 2 shows for you per week, all presented by First Star Logistics. And the great thing about partnering with First Star Logistics is not only do they give us an awesome platform and great support to make these great shows, is they have awesome stuff to give away every single week. So make sure you're following along on Twitter at First Star Log. You'll get all of those giveaway details for week 1. We've got some custom Bengals themed PlayStation 5s to give away. And make sure you're following at Joe Goodberry as well, myself at Jake Liscow, and Dave Lapham at DL in the Trenches on X on Twitter to make sure you're up to date on everything we're giving away and have a chance to enter when those giveaways are taking place on Twitter, because often they'll be both on X on Twitter and on the post-game show on YouTube, which we will be doing live. And Joe, we're excited to dive in this year. It's going to be a little bit different this week than I think it will be throughout the season. But typically, there are questions that we're asking going into a given week of a football season. In week 1, there's a whole lot more questions. There's a whole lot more that we don't really know about how a season is going to play out, because you have such limited exposure to what teams are really doing in the preseason. And the Bengals have certainly been making this excuse on the defensive side of the ball. We're only showing 20% of our playbook, have been the comments from various folks involved with that Cincinnati defense. So we're often going to talk about what is the thing we're looking to learn this week. Some weeks that might be one simple question. Some weeks like this week, it might be multiple questions because we're at the beginning of a season. We'll also tend to dive into matchups that are going to matter here every week on the Jake and Joe Bengals preview show presented by First Star Logistics. And one last piece to get to here, Joe, before we dive into those questions, just a reminder, if you listened to us, you watched us last year, you know that First Star Logistics is one of the fastest growing companies in the Cincinnati area. And if you're looking for a new career, First Star Logistics is looking to expand its brokerage department by hiring people looking for a fast-paced career in the logistics industry. Visit firststarlogistics.com for details on how you can join the team and one of the top companies to work for in the Cincinnati area. And I tell you, Joe and I really enjoy the working relationship we have with First Star. Now, that being said, Joe, let's talk about the questions we're looking to get answered here in week 1 that features a strength on strength matchup to me on one side of the ball and a weakness on weakness matchup on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, you're right. And Jake, I'm happy to be here with another year of doing, content, making shows together under First Star umbrella with you. Excited for that. So I just wanted to start with that. And, it's glad First Star came through with the Dalton Risner. You're Dalton Risner. I'm the Trey Hendrickson signing in August to make sure and ensure this was going to happen again.
Why am I making 1/30th of the money? I don't like this.
No, I don't think it went that way. So that's all right. I think we got a good deal for both of us. But beginning week 1 it's kind of funny because those signings are how I'm feeling about. If you asked me beginning of August, I was getting pretty nervous about this team. Not just the preseason games, the way the defense was looking on the field. Is Trey going to be here? Are they going to do anything about right guard? And I was starting to feel the angst that everyone else was, I think, at that time. And then they get Trey for 1 year. I mean, that ramifications long-term, that's a conversation for the offseason. But for now, he's going to be out there, and he's their best defensive player. And then the Dalton Risner signing happens right after. And now I feel so much better about the guard position and the guard depth and the offensive line depth as a whole. And really the offense, it's pretty bulletproof. They're looking pretty good. And he's not expected to start week 1. They named Lucas Patrick the starter at right guard. But I think in due time, Dalton Risner will be the starter at one of these positions. If Dylan Fairchild stumbles in his rookie season, you can insert him there. So for me, I went from August being down here, I want to be on the screen, and then September being here. Is that just the excitement of week 1? Is that just the excitement of football being back? I don't know. But at the same time, I do feel, I think, more confident in this team than I think some of the national analysts have been. I don't know if you've caught this the last couple of days, and I assume Bengals fans listening and watching have. But even Dan Orlovsky, who's the biggest Joe Burrow supporter and voice out there in the analyst sphere of everything, he didn't pick the Bengals to make the playoffs. And I just, it's throwing me a little bit because I keep coming back to, do you not expect Joe Burrow to play well? Do you not expect Joe Burrow to be a top 5 quarterback in the league? No matter how you want to slice it, we believe he might be number 1. But if his numbers are that good again, and they've done everything on offense to ensure that it is again, why wouldn't they be knocking on the door to the playoffs? You look last year, I just did this. The top 15 quarterback rating passers in the league, 12 made the playoffs. The only 3 that didn't were Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, and Joe Burrow. And Purdy and Tua had their issues, right? I think that was a much different situation than Cincinnati. It took historic failures in high-scoring games, mainly by the defense, sometimes the special teams, and once in a while by the offense, for them to not make the playoffs. If any of those parts get fixed even slightly, how is this team not in the playoffs? So for me, my big picture, my biggest question is, can this offense still carry them? And I almost have no doubt or question on that. I would like to see it against the Browns. Obviously, we'll get into matchups, and that is the strength versus strength. But if the defense is marginally better, if the special teams is marginally better, and at this point, I don't see why we couldn't make the case that both are. If the offensive line is marginally better, this team should be back where we expect them to be.
When we talk about questions, and I like your summary, to me, they're almost entirely on the defensive side of the ball. Like, there's a question at right guard on offense, and there's a bit of a question for me about how they're going to use the tight ends and the various packages that they can put together with the 5 tight ends on the roster. But that's getting into the minutia on offense. Like, the real fringes of what matters in winning football games, the margins on offense. And I don't think we're too worried about the marginal difference that those guys can make for you on offense. I think we're worried a lot about the marginal differences that they can achieve on defense. And the point that I keep coming back to as I think about the outlook on this season in general is their variance in close games and high scoring games and games where the offense did more than enough to win, I don't know, probably 85, 95% of games. They were terrible. And if half of those situations, just half of those situations go differently, go in the Bengals' favor. Say, for example, and I don't want to play the if game too much here because these things did happen and they lost these games, but say they protect a 2-score lead against Baltimore or make a kick when they need to make a kick against Baltimore. They don't get the DPI call on 4th and 17 when they've essentially beaten the Chiefs at that point. You get a team into 4th and 17 needing points to keep the game going. You pretty much won the game. You just have to make one more play. You make 2 plays in those 2 spots, you're a playoff team. You're 2 wins better. And the narrative around you as a team is probably entirely different. So when you see Good Morning Football, I think it didn't have a single analyst projecting the Bengals to make it into the playoffs. And I don't pay too much attention to that stuff. I'm with Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson, the No Shouty shows. That's a thing they do. I really like the No Shouty shows shirt. I think it's a picture of Stephen A. Smith. Not to take down Stephen A. or anything, but we all watched Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp laugh at Joe Burrow as he outlined the Bengals having enough money to do all the things that they ended up doing, not necessarily the way we wanted them to do them or in the order or timing we wanted them to do them, but they did them all. So we don't like the shouty shows in the first place, so I don't pay too much attention to it. But I feel like the analysis that is leading you to believe the Bengals won't make the playoffs is that even if the offense is just as good as it was last year, which shout out the Athletic Football Show, Derek Klassen, was the best offense in the NFL by EPA per play and success rate when Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins were on the field together. Health is obviously a question for T. Higgins if you're talking about questions on offense. Should be pretty good on offense. So if you're thinking the Bengals are going to miss the playoffs, you're assuming that the defense is going to be just as bad as last year. And even being just as bad as last year, that variance is still going to go against them in all of those big moments.
Are they as unlucky?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that the other part? Like, how could you be as unlucky this time?
Exactly.
And to me, I just looked at these numbers too. When Joe Burrow has a 95 plus quarterback rating, and the average around the league is right like a 93, shy of a 94. If he's a 95 plus, the The Bengals win about 73% of their games. That's a great percentage. All he has to be is above average. When he's a 105 plus, they're winning 79% of their games. They have only lost 10 games. 12 games when he's had a 95 plus quarterback rating, and 6 of them happened last year. 6. That is a crazy number. And they scored 32.5 points per game in those 6 losses. Like, to think that's going to happen again, if it does, fire everyone, because you got a systematic issue of bad luck happening. But on the other hand, just by variance, we've talked about this for years when we've done shows together, going back all the way to 2020. The variance in your defense from year to year, from play to play to game, is wild. The swings are wild. When we're talking about the Bengals were 22nd in EPA last year, whatever it was, I think it was around that range. That is an average of the season. There were some good games. There were some terrible games, obviously. But really, the variance is what I'm focused on. And looking at how they played the Browns recently, I've looked at the recent games. Joe Burrow stats have increasingly gotten better each year against the Browns. The defense has performed better. Remember, they're getting torched by Baker Mayfield in 2021. You get back to the last couple of years, and the Browns offense has struggled more and more against the Bengals. And I think we can bank on that a little bit. This Browns offense is not expected to be good this year. Joe Flacco's going out there. Joe Flacco puts that ball in harm's way often. And this Bengals defense is focusing on turnovers and creating chaos, I think, this offseason. Those things kind of mesh together. On one hand, week 1 is wildly unpredictable. Playoff or division games, wildly unpredictable. Anyone can win those all the time. The Bengals have struggled with the Browns. Bengals have had slow starts. But on the other hand, I do think there are more strength matchups potentially that heavily favor the Bengals side. And if you look at Vegas and the favorites throughout the week 1 slate, the Bengals are way up there. They should dominate this game in a lot of ways, but it's that week 1 and all the reasons I laid out.
They should have dominated the New England Patriots last year in week 1. And there are many parallels between this game and that Patriots game. The big difference is that this is in Cleveland, in a game that Cleveland is going to get up for. It's the season opener. And typically when the Bengals have to go to Cleveland in recent years, when Cleveland's going to get up for the game, be it primetime on Halloween or whatever the situation is, it's been weird for the Bengals. And week 1 has been weird for the Bengals, to the point where I've talked about week 1 weirdness now for several years. And here's a take that we'll see when we reconvene in a couple of days here, Joe. We'll see if this sticks or not. Is that perhaps playing your starters in the preseason mitigates the potential of week 1 weirdness just a little bit, just because they've had some live football experience this preseason that previously was limited to joint practices, which are thud. They've actually had to deal with real pressure in Joe Burrow's face. They've had to deal with real hits on their quarterback, real sacks at times on their quarterback, and figuring out those protection issues and figuring out how the playmakers are going to deal with contact and all of those things. But again, we're spending all this time on the offense, where the questions to me are really on the defensive side of the ball. And I think we go there now, because you actually had a great tweet about this, and this is a topic that you wanted to cover on the show. So let's get into it. There are areas where you can pretty quickly make an argument that the Bengals should be better in these spots. And there's good rationale for making the argument that the Bengals should be better in several spots on defense. But when I say that out loud, and I think about what I watched from this defense in the preseason, I kind of get that cognitive dissonance. Like, yeah, on paper, you're right. That should be better. But boy, did they look the same defending the run against the Washington Commanders on Monday Night Football as we saw when they were struggling to defend the run in 2024.
Yeah, I'm going to go over a few of those because that was a subscriber tweet, so not everyone saw it, and I wanted to expand on this show, so I'll save in the rest of it. I started just looking at last year's week 1 roster versus this year's week 1 roster. And the Bengals defense played well in week 1 last year. Actually, it gave them a chance to beat those New England Patriots and probably the Kansas City Chiefs in week 2.
It's kind of relative in week 1, right? It was Jacoby Brissett, and they couldn't get him on the ground.
They could not.
It was the Patriots, but they only gave up, the 20 points?
So I'm looking at it, and I go, okay, knowing what we knew, how last year transpired, they really didn't have a nose tackle. It was something we talked about all offseason. Are they going to get one in the draft, or what are they going to do? Are they going to sign a veteran? Are they going to get someone late in the free agency? This is for 2024. And I think that affected them. They ended up signing Lawrence Guy. Both of the young defensive tackles that they drafted last year weren't ready to go week 1. They were injured. So they had their challenges there. This year, just adding TJ Slayton as a nose, I think that makes a difference. I even think having a veteran, Mike Pennell, in the practice squad, we'll see if he's called up right away or how that works. You're going against teams early in the season here that are going to be run focused and run heavy. I think the Bengals defense and defensive line has been run pilled under Jerry Montgomery. I think they are worried about run defense. So I could see him being elevated. I think that switch right there in the middle, though, could be huge for this defense, right? I think the way the defense coordinators, defensive coaches are talking about Chris Jenkins Jr. And from the flashes I think we've seen, and I've diagrammed a bunch of them this offseason, this summer, he does look better. Can he make more plays than last year? Is he going to be more impactful? I think that would be a huge upgrade. Their depth last year at D-tackle was terrible at times. Whenever that backup rotation got in there, you knew instantly. I think largely it's not just the interior. I think I go right to defensive end. And Sam Hubbard, you keep seeing these charts where Trey Hendrickson's way up here and Sam Hubbard's way down here. And I go, yeah, that's right. I do remember Hubbard was a shell of himself for much of 2024. And when Osai got in there, instantly you could see a little bit of a difference. And now is Osai's number one on the depth chart to start, but Shamar Stewart's going to play. Miles Murphy's going to play. I feel like defensive end is stronger. You get the addition by subtraction there, right? But get Hubbard off the field, get some more pass rush, get more versatility. It looks like Shamar Stewart and Joseph Osai are going to kick inside. You can do the same with Cam Sample. I feel better about the DN group. So if you, as a whole, just looking at the defensive line, I feel better about it than I did last year. And then I go to linebacker, and there was a lot of complaints about Jermaine Pratt. Logan Wilson missed half the year. You're getting Logan Wilson back. If he is still good, if he's still that guy, great. Logan Wilson was a good player for them. We'll see if Demetrius Knight's good. We'll see if Oren Burks or Barrett Carter can carve a role in a spot on this defense. But Pratt at times last year was a sore to watch. It was a headache at times because he didn't want to take on blocks. He looked super stiff when he was trying to chase things down. He looked terrible in coverage. What game was it? The Steelers game where they're just checking it down and Pratt couldn't do anything.
Quick game.
Yes, the quick game. It was just quick game. Well, Jermaine Pratt, they thought a second round rookie would be an upgrade there. And there's potential that it is. And then when Mike Hilton got released from the Dolphins, he was good in loose scheme. And we appreciate pound for pound. Mike Hilton was one of the funnest players to watch on Sundays or on film reviews. But
the best linebacker in a cornerback's body to ever play the game. I tell you what.
But you could watch offenses attack him and string him out and get him on deep crossers and say, you run with our slot guy and get their slot guy, their fast guy into the slot and make Hilton run with him. Or the Bengals were removing him from obvious man situations or third and long situations. Dax Hill and on the inside and moving into that nickel slot could be a souped up height, weight, speed that you don't find in the slot, right? That's why I'm excited for him in there. And that's what he played in college. I think he has a chance to be a playmaker on the inside. That could be an upgrade. They started Von Bell for half the year, and he couldn't move anymore. It was the ghost of Von Bell. It was like the shadow of what we remember Von Bell being until they were forced to put Jordan Battle in there. There's a lot of reasons why this could be better. DJ Turner coming back from injury. Cam Taylor-Britt may have his head screwed back on straight. And if that's the case, like as a whole, you could be a lot better on defense just because of those things. Now, they're all not going to work out that way, but if have to, that's an improvement.
That's all you need. You don't need every coin flip to come up the Bengals' way because they won't. But you don't actually need them to because of the way things went for them last year at all of those spots that you just mentioned. I remain skeptical about some of these positions. I need to see Demetrius Knight come along. I need to see Barrett Carter come along. I would like to see more Oren Burks, perhaps, than the coaches are inclined to run Oren Burks out there because they love Demetrius Knight in practice. They love the way he approaches the game. And he does give you some versatility in terms of some of the things we're going to see from them from a schematic difference perspective. I did some an episode with Mike Santagata this week, diving into some of the differences we saw schematically, Lou versus Al Golden in the preseason. And one of those big differences is the three linebacker packages that you're seeing a lot more of with Al Golden matching with some actual base personnel, meaning you've got Demetrius Knight out there and Oren Burks and Logan Wilson, and they're putting 5 guys on the ball. Sometimes it's just 3 defensive linemen. So you're getting a 3-3-5 kind of look, and you end up with then potentially Demetrius Knight on the surface, essentially playing edge defender, Oren Burks in a similar role. And those guys need to be able to do more than what linebackers were asked to do in Lou Anarumo's scheme, where they were strictly off ball for the most part. I think last year we saw a little bit more of Jermaine Pratt playing on the defensive surface, but I think some of those schematic changes will be interesting. It's just, to me, what we saw from Demetrius Knight in games was so far different from what we saw from him in practices in the preseason, where he was making plays, especially in the passing game. He looked cerebral. And then in games, it looks like it was just going a little bit fast for him. Not too unusual for a rookie for the game to be moving a little bit fast, but in the run game in particular, where his one step slow to react or a half step slow to react is the key to a play going for 35 yards on the ground instead of 8 yards on the ground. That's a pretty significant problem to have when it's those kinds of margins that we're talking about. So I do think that one will be interesting, but also a part of this run D issue that we saw from them in the preseason was safeties being out of position at times. And so where there is reason to think that Geno Stone should play better, should be somewhere between Baltimore Geno Stone and last year Geno Stone. And there's reason to think that Jordan Battle should be better than Von Bell, probably somewhere between Von Bell last year and Jordan Battle's rookie year. I don't think that we're necessarily going to see him get back to that level that at least PFF thought he played at as a rookie, but it's reasonable to think that he should be at least a little bit better than what we saw from the safety position last year, but didn't see it in the preseason. And that's the problem that I have with some of it is, and the reason that I still have the questions, I guess, is what I would say is, how do those things play out now in a football game that counts against the Cleveland Browns? But the standard for week one, Joe, as we can get into some of these specific matchups, and the reason that we're looking for some of these questions to get answered in this game is going to be higher for this defense than it will be in other games in this season. This is a weakness on weakness matchup on that side of the ball where, yeah, Bengals defense, if you're going to be the 18th best defense in the NFL this year, and you're going to be opportunistic, and you're going to get off the field a little bit better on third downs, and you're going to have a better pass rush because you're going to stop the run to have fun, as they say, and get your NASCAR package out there on the field with Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart next to each other and say, hey, right side of or left side of whoever's offensive line, deal with this, deal with these two athletes and this much power coming at you from the left side of the offense. Well, you got to stop the run to get there. And so against the Browns, knowing that their offensive line is diminished from the Bill Callahan glory years, knowing that there are matchups that you should like in the trenches, even if you're skeptical of this Bengals defensive line, knowing that Joe Flacco is going to put the ball in danger. The standard for week one, for them to show us that it's not just a defense that's going to get demolished every week again, is, for me, Joe, quite high in this first week when you consider the quality of the opposition.
Yeah, they need to look good, right? If they give up 24 points, and I think I predicted somewhere else 27-23 Bengals. I don't even know if we discussed if we're going to do predictions here, and I don't think we are. But if I'm thinking a close game that the Bengals come out on, and maybe they are up by 10 throughout the game, and it just ends up being one where the Browns make it close at the end, I don't think that's good enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they hold the Browns to 17, I'll say, hey, if they defend the run, if they create a couple turnovers, if like Shamar Stewart gets a sack along with Trey Hendrickson, I'm going to say, hey, okay, that's all good stuff.
Or honestly, just bat a pass and get a couple pressures. I'm pretty happy with you, Shamar Stewart, if that's the case.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a sack. Like, I'm not projecting him to have 10 sacks this year, but right, if he's disruptive and it leads to big plays, great. But yeah, from a big picture, that's what I want from the defense. From like looking at individual matchups and things I can't wait to see in this game, this is going to be one of the games where they're actually going to be in a base defense a little bit more. The Browns don't have great receivers. If anything, they're a 12 personnel team, and they're going to run the ball, and they're going to bring it in tight and do some wide zone stuff and play action off of it. If they can control the game, that's what they want to do. And we're going to see Harold Fannin, who we all got to know during the draft season, and David Njoku, and they're going to be moving those guys around. And sometimes it will be 12 personnel, and they'll spread it out from there. But that is, how are the Bengals going to cover that? Are they going to bring Dax Hill in and say, Dax, you're covering one of these tight ends, we're going to go in nickel? Like Lou would have done that with Mike Hilton, right? They would have done it with Trey Flowers as well in that era. What is Al Golden going to do? Is that an Oren Burks? Is that when he comes in? Is it Barrett Carter? Hey, we're going to let you cover Harold Fannin Jr. on this, or Demetrius Knight, whatever it may be. I'm interested to see how the Bengals defense counteracts because I feel like we don't have these answers. We may have, if it was a Lou team, we would have said, well, they'll probably still play their nickel and they'll do their thing and they'll be short against the run, as good as Hilton was against the run. But this time it feels like, and let's see if it is, Golden will stack it a little bit more and bring more guys into the box and say, all right, beat us over the top if that's what you're going to do. If we're taking what he did at Notre Dame, we'll probably see a single high safety, and they're going to load up that box and play man coverage and say, we think our corners and DBs are better than your weapons. Our front's got to stop it man on man. Let's defend the run. And if they can, I mean, that's from there. I expect the offense for the Bengals to do good things. If the defense can at least have that type of plan and execute it, I feel like we're already a step ahead for what people are expecting from this defense in 2025.
Yeah, the Browns offense just shouldn't stress them the way that other offenses in the NFL should stress them. Like I said, it's not like it's the glory years of Bill Callahan, wide zone, Nick Chubb, Cleveland Browns offense. They're going to try to run the ball. I don't see how you don't go 12 personnel heavy and just try to run the ball the whole game,
especially
with
after what
you
they saw in preseason. Yeah,
That's
we're on the same
exactly
page.
what I was going to say, especially after what they saw in that Monday Night Football game. But I mean, who's stressing David Njoku? Good tight end. Harold Fannin could be a playmaker. Jerry Jeudy, sure, but Joe Flacco's throwing him the ball, and I know Joe Flacco can be like an Andy Dalton level quarterback even now, better than current Andy, but like the Andy that we thought was the Andy Dalton line kind of quarterback. That's probably his upside, but he's still got that gunslinger mentality. He can't move. And you get into those passing situations. You have a matchup that I really like on the offensive line, defensive line side of things, which is Trey Hendrickson getting DeJuan Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And DeJuan Jones, who Ohio State fans loved coming out, had a promising start under Bill Callahan in Cleveland, has not maintained that as far as I can tell. And where I still think Jack Conklin is a solid player, and Wyatt Teller is going to have his ups and downs, and Joel Bitonio are I think those guys are still solid to better than solid, right? But they're not what they once were. They've dealt with injuries, they've dealt with aging. They're not the same guys. There's that one matchup when the Bengals are on defense. That is Trey Hendrickson, backup quality left tackle potentially for the Cleveland Browns, and DeJuan Jones, potential to wreck the game there. Does Trey get those opportunities? It sounds like he's going to be used a little bit more selectively this year. Might see more rotation on this defensive line than we're used to. But if you're looking for an individual matchup, that's one that certainly stands out to me. And then the other one, as you mentioned, Joe, like the tight ends are the threat for this Browns defense. And what is the approach from Al Golden to deal with the tight ends? Do we see some of those Barrett Carter packages if they like Barrett Carter's movement ability, coverage ability more, dealing with, say, like a Harold Fannin type of player, a little bit smaller? And then there's the size mismatch with David Njoku that they would have to figure out.
I feel like it's going to be Dax. Like if I can make a prediction, just off some clips I saw once it looked like Dax was fully back into the defensive rotation and playbook, right around that last preseason game, it looked like they were doing a lot of that and bringing him in. And there was some dime defense too. People have said, hey, they need to get a third safety. I agree. But also we've seen clips of them doing 4 corners out there and having Dax cover a tight end. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. If you have to do that, if you have to go that way, play your better. They're stronger at corner than they are at the safety depth this year. So play your corners. And Dax has the versatility. And I think they view him as a guy that they can, at this point now, because he's done everything, put him wherever they want and get good results.
And he has the size to he's obviously undersized compared to David Njoku, but for a corner, has the size that you would want if you're throwing a corner at David Njoku. And then from a matchup perspective, where the Browns really are only threatening you with Jerry Jeudy, I think Tillman's fine, but Jerry Judy's the one that's like a plus receiver in their receiver room. You have guys that are capable in that matchup. Not that I think like stylistically it's a great matchup for Cam Taylor-Britt or anything like that with Jerry Jeudy, but I think that it's good enough that if you want to match David Njoku with Dax Hill, then you can take that approach. But all of this is predicated on stopping the run and finding out how TJ Slayton is going to fill that role, where they are with BJ Hill on that extension, and taking a vet day during Thursday's practice should be fine. But getting that rotation and finding out to what level Chris Jenkins has leaped in year 2. as you pointed out, big question for this game. Let's flip to the offensive side of the ball, talking about matchups here. The one in the secondary that's always fascinating when the Bengals play the Browns is Denzel Ward's matchup with the Bengals receivers. But once you get past Denzel Ward this year, it's the roller coaster of Greg Newsome
Yeah.
at the other corner spot, and in the nickel, it's going to be Cameron Mitchell. And
You remember
those guys,
Cameron
I think,
Mitchell,
are
right? Northwestern?
both of those guys, Northwestern corners.
Oh,
Both of
that's
those
right.
guys are concerns, as far as I can tell, for the Cleveland Browns, especially in a game that's going to really challenge your corner depth, as the Bengals will for every opponent they face this year. Beyond that, obviously, Myles Garrett, you're circling that one. And one of the things that is perhaps interesting only to the sickos among us is, like I mentioned earlier, the tight end rotations that we're going to see, the different tight end packages we're going to see, because I think you could see at least 3 different tight end groupings on Sunday.
Yeah, I think the big one for me is I'm going to look back into the slot now again on the other side because Newsome was their slot guy, but they lost Martin Emerson Jr. for the year. And that's really what made, I think, this defense good. Not just Myles Garrett and all that and Denzel Ward, but the combo of having 3 good corners, the way we feel about the Bengals' weapons on offense, the Browns had that at cornerback. It amplifies each other when they're all quality players. And Emerson was, and Newsome in the slot was. So and I think now it looks like the Browns are putting both Ward and Newsome on the outside, but both guys can kick in and cover the slot. So it'll be interesting. That'll be like, all right, are they doing it or not? Bengals like to get Jamar Chase in the slot. So are they going to have someone shadow him? Bengals also, T has made a mention that he's going to get in the slot a little bit more this year. Who follows him? Is somebody going to, are they just going to shadow? I think if I was the Browns, I'd probably just put Ward on Chase and put Newsome on Higgins and just roll with it. You had all offseason a game plan something, but do they also follow them in the slot? How are they going to do it? Bengals will put Chase and Higgins in the slot, and they'll have Gesicki and Chase Brown or Andre Yoshibash out wide. That's fun to see. How are they going to? I think that's a nice chess match between the two. I think if Martin Emerson was still healthy, and after signing Noah Fant before, in that couple weeks there when both were on each team respectively, I was thinking, the Bengals are going to go 12 personnel. They're not going to let these corners lock up their receivers, and they're going to come out with that. They've increased their 12 personnel usage every year. They have increased their condensed formations every year. Shout out to Derek Klassen on the Athletic Football Show with this. Something we've noticed and talked about, but it's nice hearing the numbers that they actually have. And will the Bengals keep going with that? I feel like it's a chunk of their playbook they can definitely dive into if the receivers are struggling to get free, which at this point, I feel like they're going to bust open at some point. It's why you paid these guys. It's why they're here. They understand their job. We talk about Joe Burrow, and the expectations for this, for the season and for the team, the franchise under Burrow. For Higgins and Chase, they need to beat Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome. That's why they were paid, and they need to take that pressure off of Burrow and off of the offensive line and off of the run game. But I do think if they struggle a little bit, the Bengals have that option now to go 12 personnel, condense it a little bit, and give that ball to Chase Brown, run some play action, run some pistol, do all the things they showed in the summer that made me go, all right, this defense may have found a couple extra pages to their playbook.
The offense might have found a
Yeah,
couple of
sorry.
extra pages
We
to the
talked so much
playbook.
defense already.
We've talked both sides of the ball. We're 32 minutes deep here, and what's going to be fascinating is really the treatment that Jamar Chase gets in this game. In the past, we've seen a lot of Denzel Ward dealing with Jamar Chase, but if that's the approach from the Cleveland Browns, with the way the Bengals have stacked weapons this offseason, whether it is Mike Gesicki, whether it is Andre Yosavash, whether it is Noah Fant finding his role, or obviously T. Higgins, the other big gun on the other side, where we've seen, and maybe I can just run this while we're talking about it, and this cut up of the way the Browns have treated Jamar Chase over time, where you get occasional one-on-ones with Denzel Ward, but so often he's getting help in some way, shape, or form. They're bracketing Jamar Chase in some way, shape, or form based on the way they're putting these coverages together. You see in a number of these plays that are running, if you're looking at the screen, there's help from another defender on the field for Jamar Chase. No matter where he's lined up, there are multiple eyes on Jamar Chase on a lot of these plays. So,
and I think T missed this game, right? Because Trent Irwin had that one touchdown off the flea flicker, and I remember Yoshi played a bunch in this game as well.
Yeah, and this is back, and you can kind of see who's on the field here. This is back in 2022, so this is going back a ways here now. This is pre Jim Schwartz era.
I
But
love this one though. While it's running, and like if Ward thinks he's playing that so casual, he thinks no way you're throwing this ball. I got the safety help on the inside. Why would you throw it? And Burrow just lands a dart on the hip of
yeah,
Jamar Chase.
the point I was getting to there is, as we're kind of wrapping up here, is if you're going to give that extra attention to Jamar Chase, and that's going to be your approach for this offense this year, I think, you know, one, Jamar's probably still going to get his, as we can see here. Like Jamar is still getting his at times, as we see him get blown up on a bad screenplay, as I say that. But he's also getting these back shoulders, and when he does get those one-on-ones with Denzel Ward, he can still beat Denzel Ward. And he has a lot of respect for Denzel Ward. He's talked about him as one of the more difficult matchups that he has to deal with on an annual basis. But the rest of the weapons in this offense now, Joe Burrow trusts and are so integrated in things at this point. You're in the PhD level Joe Burrow offense now. And Noah Fant's probably still catching up a little bit, but for Mike Gesicki, for Andre Yosevach, for T. Higgins, even for Charlie Jones, you're in the PhD level of this offense.
Chase
And
Brown.
Joe
I
will
want to
have
scream
answers.
every time too. Everyone, like when I'm listening to National and they talk about the weapons, I think Chase Brown's about to have a huge year. I'm not talking to you directly there. I just think like you need to lean on someone. They actually have someone they can if the passing offense is struggling.
Well, and how different will it be now that they've restructured this running game around
Yeah.
Chase Brown? And how the addition of the pistol stuff that we've seen, Joe turning his back to the defense a little bit more this preseason than you're used to seeing on a rate basis compared to the last few years, where Joe really doesn't want to turn his back to the defense very
Yeah.
often. And that's one of the big criticisms of Joe Burrow, which is hilarious to me because the guy's producing off the charts without that being a strong part of his game. But, you know, it's got to look like a Shanahan offense, I guess, to some people for it to be real offense in the NFL. Joe, what are your closing thoughts here? So the summary to me is defense, higher standard this week. This is not a good offense. You need to show up in a way that is honestly even better than we saw you show up against the New England Patriots last year. I like the way they played against the Chiefs in that game in week 2 last year. We get that kind of performance, get those timely takeaways, the timely sacks, take advantage of the matchups where you have them. Look good in terms of disguise. That's one of the more interesting things that we haven't seen from Al Golden yet, is how they are going to disguise. And Joe Burrow was complimentary of the way the defense was disguising in the preseason and training camp practices. That's something that I'm looking for on the defensive side of the ball. And on the offensive side of the ball, just looking for them to kind of eliminate, like I mentioned earlier, some of that week 1 weirdness that we've seen from them, where it takes some time to get going. Show that those preseason snaps that you took were the reps you needed to hit the ground running at a better clip here, now that Joe Burrow's had an incident-free training camp than we've seen from him in previous years. Because it has been not just Joe, but Joe Burrow has not necessarily been part of the solution in some of their early season woes. Like, he hasn't played great, certainly not up to his standard. And I've said many, many times, when Joe Burrow's playing well, it's because the timing is immaculate. Like, the ball
Mhm.
placement is always there, but when he's playing on time, he's feeling the rush well, he's extending plays when he needs to, but the ball's coming out in good timing. That's when Joe Burrow is at his best.
And they would have won that Patriots game last year, week 1, if the timing for Burrow was correct. That was my takeaway. That was the Bengals on the Brain film review on the Tuesday. It was Burrow was not good. We know that the offense didn't score enough points, but the timing was not there. And we see it develop as the season goes. Well, did the preseason work? Did the camp schedule work? Did all of this work that Zach Taylor put forth? You touched on everything, to be honest, Jake. Like, all your points correct, 100%. I'm with you. Here's what I want to see. What I would truly, and maybe this is week 1 hype getting to me. I want to leave no doubt. I want to come away like defense is better than what they showed. Defense is better than what the national expects, and even local. I mean, we have our concerns, but if you play well against a bad Browns offense, and the offense for the Bengals just goes out and looks efficient the way they have not in a week 1 game, I will come away and go, whoever did not pick them to make the playoffs is going to be wrong, because this team is going to make it if we get these things week 1 against a Browns team that's projected to pick top 3. I get it. But at the same time, it's the Browns. They're giving them struggles. It is week 1. Burrow hasn't played well early season. If they do all that, leave no doubt, answer these questions quickly. That is what I would love to see.
And you know what's crazy is we're about to wrap this up. We haven't talked about pass protection.
Big strides.
How many years would we have spent 20 minutes talking about, man, Mason Graham, Malik Collins, Mike Hall, obviously Myles Garrett. We probably talk about all their edge guys too. We'd go down the entire damn depth chart.
We're talking about Isaiah McGuire,
Alex
right?
Single. What's his name?
Alex Wright.
Alex Wright, not Singleton. Who am I thinking of? Alex Wright. Yeah, that's what you said. We'd be talking about all these guys and be like, man, hope the Bengals figure it out. Hope they have a plan. And they do need a plan for Myles Garrett. Mason Graham, Dylan Fairchild, that is a test for you in week 1. And we were super pleased with Dylan Fairchild's preseason. But hopefully we're not sitting here in a couple of days, Joe, when we're live talking about, boy, were we too optimistic about protection? I don't feel like that's going to be the case. I'm bullish on Amarius Mims year 2 leap. I'm bullish on what we saw from Dylan Fairchild in the preseason. We saw some really great recoverability for him. Even when he loses early in the rep, the ability for him to re-anchor and get his hands replaced if he loses early in a rep is really encouraging. And after watching Alex Kappa and Cordell Volson in the last few years just immediately lose, you don't see that as much. And I'm going to include Lucas Patrick in this. That's not happening as much for those guys, if at all, for Dylan Fairchild. We didn't see that from him in the preseason. And then at the other tackle spot, and Ted Karras is as steady as they go, but at the other tackle spot, Orlando Brown was having his best year in pass protection in quite a while last year until that leg injury. So a fun matchup for him to open things out against Myles Garrett, who he is going to see a lot of, I think, on Sunday, to see what kind of form Orlando Brown is starting the season with.
Last word, I just wanted to jump on that as well. And I'm bullish on Scott Peters. Just the way they all functioned in the preseason looked different. They weren't setting as deep in the pocket, right? Everyone looked like they understood what was happening. The stunts and twists weren't killing them. The blitzes weren't killing them. The tackle depth, which is it plagues the league in preseason. If you watch the preseason game, did not kill the Bengals. These guys looked much better. Even the guys on the practice squad now perform better than we saw them the last time we saw them. And to me, that's indicative of coaching. So if that carries and continues, whew.
That was the end of the thought. Got
it.
We'll wrap up there. Make sure you come back and check out the Jake and Joe Bengals post-game show. That'll be going live on YouTube very shortly after the game. We'll have links on our social media, but make sure, as always, you're following at First Star Log on X, on Twitter, to get all of the updates. If you're watching this on the First Star YouTube channel, which if you're watching this, you are, hit the follow button, hit the bell. You'll get notified when we go live on Sundays right after the game as well. You'll get notified when these videos go up late in the week. Probably going to be Friday morning for much of the season. And obviously we will adjust the schedule for Thursday Night Football because the preview doesn't do you any good on Friday if the game has already occurred. So you're going to want to keep an eye out for those giveaways. Like I said, we'll have awesome stuff all year. We're starting out strong with that PS5, that Bengals themed PS5. That's on the X page at First Star Log for all the details there. And as we wrap up, just another thank you to our amazing partner, First Star Logistics, and they are looking for some new hires. If you're looking for a new career, First Star Logistics, just a reminder, one of the fastest growing companies in the Cincinnati area and one of the top companies to work for in the Cincinnati area. They're looking to expand their brokerage department by hiring you if you're looking for a fast-paced career in the logistics industry. Check it out at firststarlogistics.com for details on how you can join the team today. Joe, a lot of fun talking Bengals football with you for the first time this year. Looking forward to doing a post-game show. Going to be a fun year. Make sure you're with us here for the ride. Jake and Joe Bengals pregame show preview show number 1 in the books. We'll be back with you after the game for the postgame.